Good morning again. Welcome from Enterprise 2.0 Conference in Boston. This is Bryant Duhan, editor with AIIM International. We have with us today Eugene Lee, who is CEO of SocialText's. Good morning.
Good morning.
First question. You have an interesting tagline on your website, on your site, "People Value Magnified," which I quite like. Can you talk a little bit about that in the context of the collaboration platform for Enterprise 2.0 and how important collaboration, working together, is for the overall success of an Enterprise 2.0 initiative?
Thanks, Brian. Well, you know, we've been talking for a long time about the difference between what sort of projects and use cases make sense for Enterprise 2.0 and collaboration, and which ones might create more friction. That's why we've been harping on the concept of value as opposed to just adoption. Because we think that if all you do is focus on adoption, you're likely to, that's probably a symptom of the fact that maybe you didn't pick the best use case to start with. Our VP of Customer Success, Michael Adonopoulos, actually coined this phrase called working within the flow of work as opposed to working above the flow of work. We have found over our many years of experience that if you pick a project that actually helps users get their job done, both as an individual and as a group, you're much less likely to have to deal with adoption issues, and you'll retrieve more value much more quickly. So we think, first of all, it starts with, what kind of problems are you trying to solve with this? Your second question has to do with collaboration, and we think that collaboration and enabling groups of people to work more effectively together really is the heart and soul of what Enterprise 2.0 is all about. It isn't just about taking patterns of cool things that are happening in the public internet and throwing them, cutting and pasting them into the enterprise. We think that it's the adaptation of these patterns towards solving real specific and broad business problems that really is the value proposition for Enterprise 2.0.
Next question is, why should an enterprise, getting back to your point about not just taking Twitter or consumer software and applying it to business, why should a business use your microblogging software? What's the business value?
You mean as opposed to just using Twitter at work?
As opposed to just using Twitter, yes.
Well, I think we use Twitter a lot at work too. We use it for monitoring the public landscape about what sort of conversations are happening, to monitor what people are saying about our brand, what kind of questions they might be asking of us, competitive information, etc. Twitter and Twitter tools for monitoring the social media landscape make a lot of sense. Inside the company, or between a company and its business partners, I really don't think you want what you're talking about at work to be showing up in public. You might want selectively to be talking about what's happening as a way of building your brand or as a way of engaging with the community. But to actually get real work done inside, I think that what I would call appropriate transparency makes a lot more sense. Who are you, who you say you are? Are you actually authenticated against the system with your corporate credentials? Is there permanency as well as manageability of what's being said, for compliance, for discoverability, for all the usual ability reasons that an enterprise IT group has to worry about when it comes to corporate communications? And is it linkable? Is it connected to? Is it intertwined with the systems that you're actually using to get your jobs done, whether it's a typical content or document management system, as many of your viewers are accustomed to, or if it's other database and transactional-oriented systems of record, like CRM or ERP or others. The ability to connect to those systems and to bring those systems into the context of the conversation flow, I think will dramatically improve the value proposition of Enterprise 2.0 as well. Okay.
You mentioned e-discovery in there. E-discovery, not something often brought up in the context of Enterprise 2.0. I think probably should be mentioned more often than not. How important will e-discovery become, or do you think it is important in the context of Enterprise 2.0?
I think the jury, pardon the pun intended, I think the jury is still out. I think the jury hasn't been called. I don't think there really is any case history on this yet, and that's where a lot of the judgment will emerge. But that said, because SocialText's was the first enterprise wiki vendor, we've had to deal with discoverability in wikis, corporate wikis, for quite some time, and I think the case history there is still emerging. But I think that regardless of what the rules or regulations might be, I think some of the basic patterns are still there. You've got to be able to keep a record of it, and you've got to be able to delete a record of something. But the rules around how you do that are still yet to be determined.
It's going to be an interesting time. A basic question: what is social business?
I think that I don't want to get into like a description of what social business is as a grand concept. I think that the value of applying social patterns within a business is what I would answer. And what I'd say is, again, I would call it appropriate transparency. What do I mean by that? Employees are much more engaged with their company, become a much better advocate of the company, and much more engaged with their jobs and with each other if they understand what their goals, objectives, tasks, and contributions are and how they connect to the greater goal. So first of all, providing appropriate transparency and shared context and understanding about what the corporate objectives are, which usually comes from senior executives, who themselves may be laggards in adopting this kind of technology. And secondly,
present company excluded, of course.
Present company excluded, yes. And secondly, sort of more transparency and cross-functional, cross-organizational boundary collaboration amongst employees. The ability to cross those boundaries is something that we find in our larger customers releases a ton of energy. It releases information that previously was trapped. It releases knowledge from people that people didn't even know existed, because it's like someone from a different geography, someone from a different business unit, somebody from a different functional part of the organization. And so I think that crossing boundaries, shared context, all is accelerated by this appropriate transparency.
Okay. That's a good lead-in to the next question about how do you make that argument to I'm a hard-nosed CEO, CIO of a company. Why should I care about social media? You alluded to a lot of the traditional soft benefits of sharing and opening up knowledge, which I totally agree with. But if someone comes in with a bias against this software, how do you overcome that bias?
I was a co-founder of an email company back in a long time ago. And in the very, very early days of PC-based LAN email. And I remember many of the same kinds of questions, and we had to produce ROI charts based on reduction of Federal Express charges. I think that actually there's enough evidence now out there of how customers are achieving value with this stuff that really are about the business results as a result of those things that you called soft benefits. Mm-hmm. So what is the hard, tangible benefit of releasing knowledge that was trapped? It's the ability for someone to get a question answered or an issue resolved faster. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I would describe it in terms of cycle times of individual work or cycle times of exception management. The second thing is I think the visibility of an exception or an issue becoming higher and broader itself leads to faster resolution of these problems. The third thing is I think that you get a higher quality, which is hard to measure at the moment, but a higher likelihood of a higher quality response. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get into the whole crowdsourcing thing. That's not what I'm talking about. But I will tell you, we've had some eye-opening examples of skeptics being convinced on the very first go-round. Mm-hmm. A simple example is we had this was maybe 6 months ago. Very large, very traditional company was deploying our SocialText's signals, which is our microblogging solution. And we were doing just a simple 15-minute webcast to just sort of get people acclimated. It's not really a training class, it's just to get people to try it. We had about a couple of hundred people on this conference call and webinar. They were all internal folks. And we had a series of these lined up, scheduled by our internal champion. And the very first thing that we encourage people to do is to just signal, okay, what are you working on, right? Mm-hmm. Within about 2 minutes, somebody said, wait, somebody else is working on the same thing I am. Who are you? Okay, that was interesting. Next question that we ask people to say is, well, does anybody have a question to ask? Right? And unlike an email, you can ask a question of people you don't know. Mm-hmm. And somebody goes in all caps, who was clearly a salesperson, does anybody have the phone number for the business manager for this rock band? I need it now. I have a contract due at 5. And he got an answer from another person, in about a minute. And he didn't know who that person was. Now and he went and closed that deal, and that paid for. That was 100% ROI in about 7 minutes. So, I think these are the kinds of examples which I would say cycle time to issue resolution, kind of takes a lot of the sexiness of the story out of it. Right. But those are the kinds of places I think that people should look for ROI.
Well, anytime you can include Rock Band and that's a good ROI right there,
yes.
Right? We'll just close with a quick question, and what's the latest from SocialText?
Well, tomorrow at 10:40 a.m. here at the Enterprise 2.0 conference, I have been given the opportunity to deliver a keynote, and we'll be making some exciting product announcements during that keynote. So I encourage everybody to stay tuned.
Well, very good. For everyone out there, you can actually, I think, watch the streaming of that tomorrow. And with that, thank you very much, Eugene.
Thank you.